Perhaps it wasn't until we saw the wrinkles on Tom Cruise's face at the recent film festival that it hit us. The man who dangles off planes and rides a motorcycle off a cliff is now over 60. The journey that's been tied to his daredevil persona may be nearing its end. That's why the 8th installment, titled The Final Reckoning, isn't just another action blockbuster. It also carries the task of wrapping up almost 30 years of Mission Impossible, a franchise whose scale, quality, and cultural impact are enormous. Marketed as the chapter that connects Ethan Hunt's impossible missions across the years, will this finale be grand and moving enough? How far do Tom Cruise and longtime director Christopher McQuarrie have to push the danger to outdo their own legend? Today, let's share our thoughts on Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and see whether this blockbuster keeps its standards even as it bids us farewell. Set after the events of Dead Reckoning, Ethan now has the cruciform key and the secret of the submarine Sevastopol, believed to hold the source code of the Entity, the AI that's destabilizing global politics and can penetrate any intelligence network. In this 8th film, the Entity has already taken control of the nuclear warheads of most nations. Only the UK, France, Russia, China, and the US remain. From here, Ethan has to race against time before humanity is wiped out. Gathering the few allies he has left, the next impossible mission officially begins. First off, from its opening moments, The Final Reckoning feels like a concluding chapter. It calls back to Ethan Hunt's entire tenure at the IMF, briefly summarizing the missions he's completed, the impossible plans he's executed, and the teammates he's lost. It's only a few minutes, but the US president's direct message acknowledging Ethan's contributions is deeply affecting, especially for anyone who's followed him from the start. On top of that, the way this film threads in earlier installments gives this particular fight special meaning. I won't spoil more for the sake of your experience, but true to the title Final Reckoning, every choice in Ethan's past really does lead him here. All those times he defied orders, the battles where he went with his gut, they've all contributed to the current situation. From that setup, we immediately understand why it has to be Ethan Hunt who stops the Entity, why he has to settle his own karmic debt. It's an intriguing motivation that puts Ethan in a position he's never been in before. However, to be fair, director-co-writer Christopher McQuarrie tries to do so much that the first act buckles under the load, revisiting Hunt's legacy, expanding the Entity's grand design, introducing new characters, and tying up leftover threads from Part 7. The first hour ends up feeling like a dense briefing. There's a flood of developments, and characters hop locations very quickly. The dialogue reveals this most clearly. Mission Impossible has always had those scenes where Ethan's team sits down to plan, bantering as they deliver exposition, in a way that never feels dry. It's a signature charm of the franchise, because each team member's personality makes the conversation lively. In Part 8, though, even split among the group, it feels like they all have to speak very fast, just to cover the points. What's the US government doing now? How is the Russian military responding? How do we approach the Sevastopol? The film demands laser focus, because miss a line or two and you might lose a key detail. As with many tribute-style finales, Mission Impossible also runs into the problem of mythologizing its hero. Think of the John Wick or Fast and Furious franchises. Characters face pressure to be more legendary with each sequel. Ethan Hunt isn't immune. The first act repeats phrases like "save the world" and "the fate of humanity rests in one man's hands" a bit too often. To me, Hunt has always been a ghost. His appeal lies in how he acts more than he grandstands. This slightly overcooked hyperbole ends up backfiring, giving Ethan a faint superhero sheen. Just look at the family in Fast and Furious. They've gotten powerful enough to apply for the Avengers, and you'll understand the risk. Of course, Mission Impossible is wise enough not to put Ethan on a flying car into space. In short, while the first act stirred a lot in me, it spends a bit too much time elevating Ethan through dialogue, which runs counter to what makes him compelling. Also, be ready to stay sharp. There are multiple overlapping factions, and the plans can get pretty intricate, and that's about all I can complain about in Chapter 8. Because once we hit the second act and Ethan slips into his diving suit, turns that valve, and the widened frame fills the entire IMAX screen, there's nothing left to do but marvel. The 20-minute Sevastopol sequence, nearly wordless, is staged and cut brilliantly. And the scene where he hangs from an airplane may be one of the most insane action beats ever put on film. Sure, these missions verge on the implausible, but with Tom Cruise doing the stunts himself, clinging to a plane, free-falling while holding a camera, the realism is undeniable. There's not much left to say about the imagery and experience. Few franchises dare to challenge Mission Impossible's appetite for risk. Here's hoping Tom Cruise maintains that physical edge. He once said he'd do this until he's 100. Without him, action cinema would be a little less thrilling. The second act is also tightened by a mysterious antagonist, the Entity. Its ability to predict the future keeps us constantly curious about what comes next, whether those prophecies will fulfill themselves. I think how you respond to the Entity depends on your willingness to accept a nearly omnipotent AI. If you do, then yes, this is the toughest foe Ethan has ever faced. Its selfishness, cruelty, and ruthlessness can't be explained by human psychology, and its plan is genuinely intricate. In a moment when AI is the zeitgeist, the Entity is a clever nod to current anxieties. Gabriel makes a solid return too, though it's a pity the old blood feud between him and Ethan isn't explored more deeply. After a major death in the previous film, the IMF team has changed. I won't reveal more, because who sacrifices what and who remains is pretty crucial. What you need to know is that every character beat, old and new, has already been seeded. In the previous chapter, so they're joining, or rejoining, the IMF feels earned. Everyone has a distinct personality and gets a moment to shine. Benji and Luther are especially memorable, and a few familiar faces from the earliest films return to help Ethan reflect on his entire career. All of this builds to a third act that's explosive, spectacular, and full of feeling. The IMF's plan requires true teamwork, and, as usual, victory is decided in a heartbeat. For me, the way the ending honors Ethan Hunt's legacy is handled far more elegantly than the first act. It doesn't try to canonize him. It portrays him exactly as the US president describes. A man who never follows orders, but never lets us down. A stubborn guy, yes, but an agent who can't be bought. I wasn't disappointed by Mission Impossible's 8th entry. It closes out a 30-year run in a satisfying way. And the final message a certain character gives Ethan is a truly priceless moment. For Hunt, what matters most has always been his teammates, and thankfully, Christopher McQuarrie hasn't forgotten that. All things considered, Mission Impossible may stumble out of the gate, but it finishes with everything that's made it. Great, 2 set pieces that demand the best screens you can find, breathless chases, layered storytelling, and a Tom Cruise who only grows more embodied with time. Harsh critiques won't carry much weight when the passion on display is impossible to deny. We live and die in the shadows, for the people we love and for the people we'll never meet. That's always been the IMF creed. The difference is the characters of Mission Impossible won't fade like ghosts, they'll be remembered. Whether the impossible mission truly ends here or not, once that this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds plays one last time, for me, it's already a perfect goodbye. Thank you for watching the entire video. Don't hesitate to head to the theater for Mission Impossible. You'll get a full-spectrum high-octane experience. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.